Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 67 of the Nurtured by Nature podcast. Today, I'm delighted to welcome back Kerrie Searle, a dear friend and animal communicator based in Australia. Kerrie has previously joined me twice now, including an inspiring introduction to animal communication in episode 11 and further wisdom from the animals and our journey to reconnecting in episode 62. In this conversation, we have shifted focus a little and invite you to join us in considering the gentle but powerful alliance that plants offer us to move through the challenges of our times. We invite you to join us with a curious mind and an open heart, for now is the time to understand that living in survival is truly no existence at all. It is time to be guided to move from surviving to thriving so that we are able to show up fully in this world and actively do what is ours to do, so we can co-create a society in which all beings are able to thrive side by side. In this deeply honest conversation, Kerrie shares how many years ago she found herself at rock bottom alongside doctors who had exhausted all their treatment options. It was shortly after this that she found flower essences and the gentle yet transformative healing they offer that actively evolves to both the needs of the individual and the collective. We discuss our shared journey of exploring this healing modality whilst living in a culture that has separated us from our inherent knowing and our connection to the world around us. We consider the indigenous wisdom, ancestors and still existing worldviews where living in full connection with the energetic web of life and embracing plant intelligence is not just a possibility but a reality. We share stories of the essence blends Kerrie creates and our profound and moving experiences in creating and administering flower essence blends around the world. And of course, a conversation with Kerrie wouldn't be complete without a little whale wisdom thrown in. Welcome, Kerrie, and it's lovely to have you back on the Nurtured by Nature podcast. We've had a couple of episodes already where we've shared some of the wisdom from the animal kingdom. Kerrie is an animal communicator based in Australia, but works with clients around the world. But today, as promised in our last episode, we wanted to come back and talk about another aspect of Kerrie's work, which is the flower essences, and in particular the flower kingdom and some of the wisdom that they have to share with us. So I don't know how you'd like to get started, Kerrie, if the flowers have got a way for us to get started, or if you want to.
Actually, yes, they have. It's actually not unlike working with the animal kingdom. I was sitting just quietly prior to us starting and, with my trusty pen and paper, and just got a whole lot of messages from the flower kingdom. And there are things that are really important for them to have communicated to humans today. For those who know of flower essences, they've been around for a very long time, as in most countries, our Indigenous people here, the Aboriginal people, they've been working with flowers and plants, since time began. It's second nature to them. They lived off the land. They use them as medicine, but a lot of that information got lost along the way. So when I was listening today, and I'm laughing because the energy behind it's like the animals. It's like you will pass this on, and don't forget this, and I'm like, okay, yeah, got it. Like they're not suggesting. They're like, come on, you humans, connect in, and because we've really got a lot to say. And one of the first things they said to me was, yes, they've been around forever, but it's a reminder too that the plants, the flower essences, the trees, they evolve constantly according to the needs of what's required on the planet at the time. Okay. And I find that extraordinary because when I was sitting quietly, I head up to work with the whales in a month's time back up to Fraser Coast and Gurry, Fraser Island. And as you know, I made a whale essence there a few years back, And I was just sitting quietly, and the whales are like, you do understand that that whale essence you made then is still evolving. And I'm like, oh yeah, of course it is. Because each year I ask, am I making a new essence? And they're like, no, you don't need to make a new one. It's evolving. So the mother tincture that you've got is evolving and changing. So, that my logical brain goes, huh? How does it do that? And it's just trusting that that's the energy, the wisdom, the uniqueness, the healing of the flower essences and the plant kingdom. That's what they do. They're a step ahead of us. They're way ahead of us. There's no doubt about that. And I think one of the other really important things is we do get very stuck in reading material. If there's a book on flower essences, whether it be from California, Australia, the bark flower or batch, as you say, flower essences, it's okay, there's a book and that's how you do it. But in my, I guess, learning, and yes, I've done all the courses and all of that, but the thing that always really came through strongly for me that I try and really encourage humans to do is you can make an essence from anything. And you can make it from any plant, flower, shrub, tree. It doesn't have to be one of the ones listed in the book. And when I was thinking, oh, yeah, that's a really important message, I remember in 2020, I went to Bateman's Bay, which is in New South Wales, and I ran a workshop up there. I was originally meant to go in the November, but it was really odd. It just didn't work out. Then they had horrific fires over that Christmas in December, like horrific. And when I went in the March and traveling through and went, like, it just burnt out everything. And when I got to a place where I was making the workshop, and I said to the lady hosting it, I've been called to make an essence while we're up here. And she's like, there's nothing left. Like, everything is burnt. And I said to her, that's what we're making the essence of. She goes, really? And I said to her, we're making a phoenix essence. And she said to me, I'm just covered in goosebumps because the fire came very close to an animal. It's like a zoo. It's a very small zoo there. Yeah. And during the fires, there was a lion cub born and they named him Phoenix. And yeah, I've got the goosebumps again. And she said, so how do we make a flower essence? So we drove and we found a particular spot and we made the most amazing Phoenix essence. And what people put into the bowl in that moment was extraordinary because the teachings are, you take the leaves or the flowers, it goes into the bowl, it sits in the sun for 3 hours. I don't think I've ever made an essence, a mother tincture that way. We had burnt bits of bark, we had parts of animals that had been burnt, like whatever the humans were drawn to went into this essence. And then it was interesting, while we were sitting in silence, meditating and like writing things down and getting messages, we then saw all these almost like baby animals and creatures like showing up and coming to the bowl. And it was like, growth out of the ashes, the phoenix rising from the ashes. And it is one of the most powerful essences I've ever made. But it takes you out of that logical thinking of it has to be a flower or a plant from the book and you have to do it that way. Many of the mother tinctures I've made have sat out under full moons, have sat out for many more hours than 3 hours in the sun. What I've learnt to do is listen to when they tell me, okay, we're done, we're cooked, we're ready to go. And that to me is, it's not that I know better and it's not that the books are wrong, but what the plant kingdom is saying is, if you can connect to us, if you can sit in the silence and be connected to yourself and hear, it's not unlike animal communication. We've got a lot of information and wisdom for you and we'll guide you as to how to make them. And I might have spoken about it before, when I first was going up to the whales, I remember them saying to me, you've got to make a whale essence. And I immediately came back with, I don't think there's a bowl big enough to put the whale in. And how am I supposed to sit you in the sun for 3 hours? And they didn't even answer me. Like, that thought was so stupid and so human and so left brain. They just went, just bring all the things that you need to bring. We'll guide you. And they literally did to the second. You know, there were times when, and there is an article on my webpage about making the whale essence, but they literally told me to the now. And, you know, like I'd take, and in that moment, the whale would come up and push the water, and I would take a scoop of that, and that went into the bowl. Now, that took 5 days.
Yeah.
And we actually made the mother tincture under the full moon. And we also had one whale in particular. It was really interesting. I will never forget this. We had the bowl on one side of the catamaran, and I got this message to move it to the other side. And I'm like, why am I moving the bowl to the other side? Like, really? Okay. So I get the bowl, I move it to the other side. Minutes late, and people are like, what are you doing? I said, I've been told to move the bowl. Okay. Minutes later, this male whale came up, and the whale blew all over us and into the bowl.
Wow.
And in that moment, everyone looked at me and went, really glad you listened to that, because how amazing is it to have that energy in the whale essence? And whilst that's a whale, the plants do the same thing. You know, years ago when I started making my own blends, my left brain was like, oh, you can only have 3 to 4, and it's 7 drops twice a day. Whatever, you know, if it's the Bach, it's different. It's, you know, 4. And I'm like, yeah, my Independence blend has 48 flower essences in it. And I remember when I was making it, I'm like, no, this is wrong. No, can't do. And they were just like, put me in. Different plants were like, put me in. And the Independence blend, you can read about on my website, is all about becoming independent, you know, for animals and humans who have had past trauma, might be stuck in those early ages. You know, basically teaches to put your big girl or your big boy pants on and deal with all that's come with that trauma.
Yeah.
And by the time, it took me months, but by the time I got to the end of the encounter, I went, I might as well just put the whole kit in. That's 48 flower essences. And the plant king was like, yep, do it. And I've learned they know better than what I do about their unique ability to heal what's needed in the moment, what's needed in that blend, what's needed for that animal, what's needed for that human. Because quite often I'll be working with an animal or a human client, and a certain flower or essence will pop up, or one of my blends will pop up and say, this is what you need. And I go, really? And then in that moment, it's like, just keep going. We've given you the information. Just keep going. It's like, oh, and they are always right.
Yeah, I think even like Kerrie's worked with my 2 horses. I had a particular unpleasant experience with them a few years ago now. I think it's almost 4 years ago with actually with fireworks, and they both ended up really pretty much with PTSD, very, very traumatized from this whole experience. I mean, you were able to like crystallize what they'd felt at that time, and it was an element that I hadn't understood, which was, although the fireworks were very close and right over the head of them because it was set off by a neighbour, it was the vibration through the ground is really what had completely sort of disassociated them from their body, because they couldn't earth. So they were like, they had this, you know, the loud bangs and the lights overhead, but actually they couldn't ground themselves into the earth. And that was really what had actually just sort of taken them beyond, and and you'd found one of your essences for them, and actually it was, you needed to put an additional essence into one of your blends. And Charlie, my horse, was very specific. He was like, no, it's got to have this. I can't remember what it was, whether it was macrocarpa or
I can't either, but I can remember that moment where it was just like, and I remember saying to you, okay, he's just told me to put another one. Okay, like it's not making sense, but it went in and it stayed in. It was, and that's that knowing between not just me listening to Barney and Charlie, but also that knowing between the plant and the animal kingdom. You know, you yourself have, you know, lived and worked in Africa, But, watching animals in the wild, what plants or they will choose to eat as opposed to the ones they won't.
Yeah.
There's that knowing, there's that understanding. There's just, whereas we overcomplicate, overanalyze, very left brain. School is very left brain. It's not wrong. I was a school teacher, but it does disconnect us from our knowing. And most importantly, it disconnects us from our trust.
Yeah. I think it's really, I mean, I've had some really interesting sort of observations around plants this summer, and one of them, actually, I've got a guest coming up whose book has just come out, I think, and it's called Feed Us with Trees, and that's about basically how like tree nuts, so even acorns and things are valuable food plants, and actually how basically most of our Western society doesn't view them as food plants, doesn't view it as a source of food. Most people think of acorns as actually poisonous. I know particularly like around horses and livestock, there's a lot of like, oh my God, it's quite dangerous and toxic.
Yeah.
And one of the things that she mentions is actually in the acorns, it's the tannins, which are the toxic, but you can soak them out of it. And this is another thing, is like this sort of whole kind of notion of like poisonous plants as well. And we've got a common native plant which is called common hogweed, and then there is an invasive species which is giant hogweed. The giant hogweed is very it has a sap in it which, if it comes into contact with your skin, makes you super sensitive to sunlight, and then you obviously get blisters and things. And the common hogweed actually doesn't have anywhere near the same amount, although it has very small concentrations. It doesn't have this huge like over concentration of this component in it. But actually there's some interesting things that people were saying where they'd got had like an allergic reaction to our common hogweed, and actually it transpired it was when they'd essentially been attacking the plant. So they'd been like strimming large sections of it with mechanical strimmers, and essentially the plant is defending itself. So it increases like the density, the concentration of this sap in it that causes the photosensitivity, and then it was causing like these blisters. And I was thinking, this is the thing that we perhaps haven't actually even scratched the surface with plants, is actually understanding like that they're not a static kind of compound or species. Like they have this ability to like change their chemical composition depending on the environment and responding to it. And for me, that was what really struck me there, is like actually this plant was defending itself, rightly so, because it was about to be trimmed down. It doesn't have the same reaction to if you just gently brush past it or pick it. It's unlikely to cause you. This is our common hogweed rather than the giant hogweed, which is much more intense. And I was thinking, this is something that is becoming more known, is like the intelligence of plants. Like we're starting to understand that like the plant kingdom, they're not inanimate as they were sort of seen. They were like, oh, it's a static plant, all it does is grow, create seeds and then dies, and that's kind of like the extent of its intelligence. And actually what we're understanding, things like the wood wide web, the mycelium networks, these connections of the trees, how they're able to feed and support each other, even having trees that are cut down, that are kept alive by their relatives, despite the fact that they don't sort of on the surface show any form of life. And their ability to respond to both attract and repel sort of beneficial creatures. I mean, there's amazing things of showing like plants responding to hearing bees buzzing and increasing like the sugar in there. And it and I think that's a whole, I mean, I don't know where this has come from, but it just came out.
But it's important.
This is a whole element that I think we have, like you were saying about how we have these textbooks that say this is how we do it, and this plant is this and this plant is that. And actually what what we have is plants that are responsive to the environment
Yep,
around them, and that comes back to what you were saying about your mother tinctures evolving,
yep,
and just responding to the energy and intention around them.
yep,
And if they're under threat, they're gonna defend themselves like
yeah,
we would. Like, why would we expect them
exactly.
not to? An animal would defend itself if it was under threat. Why would a plant? But equally, if they don't feel under threat, they'll respond in other ways, like they increase like the things to make themselves more attractive to the insects. They're like, oh, come
Yep,
and here's a nice little sweet sugar treat for you, and then if
yeah,
you could carry
yeah,
my pollen away. And
yes.
it's this kind of interconnected mutual relationship that I think is something that we're really only just scratching the surface of
Yeah,
beginning to understand, is
yeah,
that plants can respond to us as much as we can respond to plants. And in some ways it's always been known, like it's survived. There's the old wives' tale of the gardener talking to their plants, and
yes,
it's like it's there, isn't it? The wisdom's there. It's it has
yes,
hung on, and it's like but
yeah.
it's not really being given the attention, I suppose, that we need to sort of basically realize how strong an ally they can be to us.
Oh, and I think, like there's a few things, and you could probably see me taking notes. Um, a few things that came up when you were talking. I think what humans we struggle with is understanding that everything is energy.
Yeah.
And unless we, unless it's a dog or a cat or a human, it's this inanimate, still it's not. There's, for example, and I think I might have mentioned it previously, the Moona tree, which is one of the indigenous trees down here, it's considered the most sacred tree by the indigenous Aboriginal people here. And it's really interesting. When I moved here, there was one particular mother Moona tree on the block of land that I had, which is quite big. And where I was, and I worked with the land when I bought it, they'd never been built on before. And I remember her saying to me, "You're going to have to cut me down." And I burst into tears. I said, "I can't." She said, "No, this is where the house needs to go because you're going to have to plant and do workshops." And like they were really specific. But when I cut her down, I did this amazing ceremony. But what she reminded me of is, okay, you don't see me above, and there is another Mother Moona tree very close by. She said, "You don't see me above, but I'm still working below because what you humans need to understand is we're all connected. We're not separate. And it's almost, the picture I get, it's almost like the roots. Yes, you have the physical, but
Yeah.
energetically, they're all connected. And even now, like I get very clear instructions about where to plant Moona trees, where to plant the tea trees, where to plant the boobiella, the seaberry saltbush, the beard heath. They're very specific about where they want to go. And it's about listening to them because like animals, like humans, they are a source of information and incredible wisdom. And look, books and, like you say, the World Wide Web and all those things are great guides. But at the end of the day, like the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom want us. Yes, you have that information, but how are you going to apply or use that individually? And it's like dosing, for example. Again, the plants are saying, yes, that's, what you read in the books, that's great. But is that what you specifically need, or is that what your animal specifically needs? And
Yeah.
I don't think in 20 years I have given the same dosage to an animal or a human twice. It's different because our level of sensitivity or how we react to or how our body metabolizes, how we react to it needs to be taken into consideration. And for you to accurately know what to dose yourself or your animal or your children or whatever it is, then you need to be able to listen to what they're saying, but also listen to yourself, connect to your animals, connect to your children, because at the end of the day, the more connected you are to yourself, then the more access you have to all these avenues of wisdom and understanding. And yeah, you've got the books, But what better to find out from is the actual individual, the actual plant or tree. My personal history from when I spoke all those years ago at the workshop. I can literally say flower essences saved my life.
Yeah.
I was very much part of the Western medical system. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but I had PTSD, I had depression, I had serious trauma. I was medicated, in and out of hospital, and I was actually getting worse.
Yeah.
And I was at the point where I was suicidal, and all the specialists got together in one room and said, "We don't know what to do with this lady. How about we give her electric shock treatment?" And I went, "No." And it was very soon after, and there was just this tiny voice that said, "There's something else out there. There's something else that can work." I think a week later, I bumped into someone who is now a really good friend of mine, who actually started me on flower essences. And there goes my journey, because what I've discovered is they don't suppress or disconnect you. They actually gently reconnect you to the parts of yourself that you've had to shut down or aren't well. And they work on physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, and energetic. They work on all the bodies. And that's the extraordinary thing. But the thing that always came through really strongly for me in my learning is they work according to whatever the individual can do. So you and I might have had exactly the same experience, and we might be taking exactly the same flower essences, but you would be taking them, the dose would be different to me, and how we process, how we work through that would be very different. So it's not a one size fits all. And that's amazing that you have a tool or a resource that can actually work according to what you need. Like, that's extraordinary.
Yeah, the word that was coming to me while you were talking was, I was thinking it's realizing that you're entering into a relationship with essentially a living, breathing, medicine, I suppose, for want of a better word for it, that can respond to you, that you can respond to as well. And that's one of the things that's really profound and powerful about them, is that they are powerful and at the same time gentle as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
That is so perfectly put, Fee, because gentle yet strong.
yeah.
And one of my very early learnings when I first started making my own blends was I don't mass produce them. So I don't have 10 brain blends or 10 independence blends. When I've done a consult with a human or an animal, what's happening in that moment is, yes, I'm communicating with them, but so is the plant kingdom. So whatever's decided on at the end of the consult, that's when I make that particular blender. And as I'm making it, it's really interesting to listen to each flower essence as I'm putting it in, whether it be, the Australian bush flower essences or my own that I make, because I make my own mother tinctures of the Indigenous trees here. But they know, because they've been part of that consult, they've listened and felt and had the wisdom and joined in the conversation about, what does this individual need? Okay, so we're making up a blend for Fiona. And, we spoke about this, and this. Okay, so it's like I'm making you might need a brain blend, someone else might need a brain blend. And yes, they've got the same flower essences in them. But when I'm actually putting the blend together for that particular individual after the consult, it's like a signature blend for them. And that's how the flowers work. It's not, buying one off the shelf that's made for whoever might come along. It's like a specific script almost for that particular.
And then that comes back to the intention again, doesn't it? It comes back to this, I think it's a real subtle energy that we actually don't fully understand and haven't really given full credit to, of this, the intention behind things. And it is something I have talked about numerous times with different people in my podcast, actually, of the intention, and even to sort of in the realm of like activism, like if you're coming at it from a place of like anger and hate,
Yes.
like that's
Yes.
the intention that you're putting behind it. And not to say it's easy, I'll take a deep breath there, because it isn't easy.
Yeah.
Our buttons get pushed, and we feel very passionate
Mm.
about it, and it's very easy to move into that space of like
Yes.
anger and frustration, and you know and that can be motivating, and for a lot of people, particularly in, I think, traditional activism, that's a lot of the driving force. These people can be
Yeah.
very angry, very sort of shouty and aggressive. And I've had some amazing conversations with people who work more, they've got a sort of history in like Buddhism and things, but they come at
Hmm.
it from a much more spiritual
Yeah.
access point. And for them, it's very important to, yes, you can have those feelings. We're not saying don't have those feelings, but to then process them enough that the
Yes.
action that you take is from a place of love, so that your intention is very different and you're
Yeah.
moving from a very different energy. And I mean, there's some fascinating science out there. Someone I've followed for a very long time is Lynn McTaggart, and she's a real scientist. She's put together some incredible science brains and people
Yeah.
around the
Yeah.
world, and she's done some amazing experiments about the power of intention. That's basically what she focuses on, is like group intention in particular is something she's very passionate
Yes.
about. And I guess historically it would have been, this was our like prayer circles as well. Like, this is
Yep.
what, groups come together with a shared intention for good. And again, it comes back to that love element coming through it. And
Yep.
that's what, we have this, like, we just don't accept that the world is energetic around us. We have these certain things that we're happy to allow ourselves to believe. Like, we're happy to cope with the fact that, like, when you want to listen to the radio, you can turn on your radio and suddenly there's music coming out of it. You can't, you don't see the music coming into it, but and the music comes out of it. And we're happy to accept like radio waves. We're happy to accept
Yes.
electricity. These are
Yes.
certain frequencies that we're like, yeah, that of
Yes.
course, that, like, it doesn't, how does your TV get the picture? and
Yes.
and we're happy for that. We're like, oh yes, of course, that's technology. But
Sorry.
no,
That's
no,
enough.
he's obviously got something to share. It's like you said something important, so I'm going to carry
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
And it's just, but the whole world is energy, like there is an
Yes.
energy exchange when you look at a plant, it's like you're turning on the radio receiver, and
Yes.
and then it's like it wants to give you energy and
Yeah.
information, and
Yes.
it's about tuning yourself to be able to, like
Yes.
you're going from classic FM to plant FM, as it were.
Yes.
And you know
Yeah.
there is this whole world out there, and there's more and more technology that's showing it as it exists. I know there's an amazing research project that the Heart Math Institute are doing about trees and like their
Yeah.
biofield and their energetic
Yes.
field. And it's it is there. Technology is catching up enough to begin to study these things to show that they're there, but actually you
Yes.
don't need that to prove it. We need, there are people like yourself who, that's your experience of the world, and it can be everyone's experience of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we can live in this world that is supportive of us, and we can be supportive of it in return.
Well, you brought up some really good points there, and as I was listening, I was getting lots of messages coming through. When you were talking about anger, anger is not a bad thing. Anger is what helps us set boundaries. But like you were explaining, it's when we project that anger onto others rather than have the intention of, okay, I'm angry about that, but I'm actually going to put it to good use. I'm not going to project my anger onto someone. I'm going to channel it in a good way. It's this is the bit where we take responsibility for what we're feeling, and it's not about saying don't be angry. Oh, be angry.
Yeah.
The animals get angry, the plants get angry, but they don't dump it on us. But we've got to learn to channel that or use that in a much better way. And when you were talking about the group intention, it reminded me when I was making the Seaberry saltbush, and there's an article on my website. It was the first mother tincture I'd made where I'd been called to actually go to, I live in a coastal town almost at the bottom point of Australia, and we've got the bay on one side but the ocean on the other. And I was instructed, because I wasn't asked, I was instructed to go to a particular beach, the Rye Back Beach. And I'll never forget it, because I turned up there and there were a whole lot of people there, and I was asked to put a few drops into the water. And it was really interesting, because when I got there and got out of the car, everyone came off the beach, stood up in the car park, and I didn't realise this. I walked down, was directed to, and when I put a couple of drops into the water, I was actually physically blown backwards off my feet, because I was projected into outer space. And in that moment, when I was hovering above, watching Mother Earth vibrate with the drops I put into the water, it showed me how, just by doing that one, I guess, small thing, actually rippled right out across the planet. And when I looked around, I could see the Indigenous people, the women's groups doing their work, and the men's groups doing their work. And there were all these groups, and I went, oh my goodness, if we all just do what we're asked to do. We're not individually asked to save the world, but I was asked to go and put a couple of drops in the ocean. Then I was asked to go around to the bay, put a couple of drops into the bay. I can't logically understand or know what impact or what effect, but when I was projected into outer space and I saw that, I just went, oh, wow. And it was like my left brain had to see that to actually understand, when we come with an intention of, I guess, for want of a better word, doing good, doing better for the planet, evolving, putting something in place that we hope helps or heals or whatever, it's the energy behind our actions. And that's the same when we're communicating with animals. They don't know words like Zoom, computer, iPhone, but they know through pictures in our minds or thoughts or feelings. So, if we say to our animals, oh, I'll take you for a walk later, but you have no intention, they hear what you're saying, but they'll disregard the verbal and follow the feeling. The plant kingdom is exactly the same. And when it comes to energy, I think what humans have to really understand more of is energy. Our energetic bodies don't have a boundary. It's not like it stops at the front door of the house that we live in, because for me to actually work with an animal or a human in another country, my energy tunes into their energy. Because, it's not like the animal sitting there going, oh, my foot hurts, or I'm not happy with this, or I've got trauma. It's the feeling, it's the energetic feeling. And telepathic isn't just for the animal kingdom. Telepathic is also the plant kingdom.
Yeah.
It's also beings that have passed, because you don't need a physical body to exist. And that's, for a lot of people, that's like, well, hang on, because we're so attached to, this is who I am. I look like this. This is my physical body. This is who I am. But I communicate with animals, humans who have passed. I communicate with plants, animals that aren't here with me. And to be able to do that, there's got to be energy.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, that's the bit where if we can't scientifically prove it or understand it, if there's not evidence for our left logical brain to understand, oh, it doesn't exist, yet it does. And it's just like, I'm constantly in awe. And, where I work, you see me looking out the window, I am surrounded by moona trees and Indigenous trees. And the information they give me and the support and the land, it's like, they're the ones that pretty much tell me what to do next in my work. Run a workshop or do this. That in combination with the animal kingdom, it's pretty clear. They know. They also know things that haven't happened yet, that we don't yet know or understand. It's about trusting that, even though, because we're human and we think we know better or we're more intelligent, the level of intelligence amongst the plant and the animal kingdom is unbelievable. unbelievable. It really, really is. The plant kingdom just, it astounds me. It really does. And that's a bit again where they're just saying now, yes, there's all that information in the books from 20, 30 years ago, but boy, oh boy, have we changed since then.
Yeah.
That was the groundwork. That's the foundation. But we've changed so much since then because humans have changed, our needs have changed. As we know, things happening on the planet have changed. And it's not like every time that changes, we have to go and make a new mother tincture or a new tree has to be, or a new species has to be formed. It's like, no, we keep evolving and changing as we should be too.
Yeah.
So there's incredible information out there.
Yeah, there's so many things from what you were saying there, but I'm going to circle back to your Seabury saltbush because I actually you were kind enough to give me some of your mother tincture, which I'm very privileged to have, and it's a fantastic, amazing essence that you created. And I actually have recently just been in the Lake District, and I'd taken a few of your essences with me as to offer as a gift, and I was
Oh,
at
beautiful.
Wastwater, which is the deepest lake in England, and it's in the sort of, it's got the highest peak in England, sort of overlooks it as well. So you've got this amazing like synergy of the height to the heavens and the depth into the earth.
Yes, how
And I
beautiful.
had it's sort of, it's about like these preconceived notions. So I had your whale essence, and that was like my initial like, and then and I had like 3 bottles of your essence. And I think I had your independence essence as well. Or it might have been your self love one, and I was like, oh, like, and then it was like, no, it was very clear. I would like the lake was like, I would like the Seabury saltbush. I was like, I don't want the others. I just and
Yeah,
I was like, are you sure? Like, I was like, I wanted to
yes,
give you these other ones, and it was like,
yes,
no.
because I know better.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I was like, okay. So yeah,
yeah,
so similar to you with your at the bay, yeah, the lake there wanted a few drops of your
yes,
Seabury saltbush, and
yeah,
it was very interesting as well because there was there's there wasn't, it's a lake, there isn't like really a current, you haven't really got like, waves on the
no,
shore in the same way that you
yes,
have with the
yeah,
ocean. But actually what was really interesting is when I put the drops in, the water retracted. Like I was right on the edge of the little shoreline, the water
yeah.
retracted quite a
Wow,
way and sort of
wow,
held for quite a long time, like retracted, like sort of drawn back. And it was only then that it returned back to sort of its original like edge level. And and this is the subtlety, isn't it, that we're talking about? And
yes,
it's about
yes,
moving into this place of real like presence and awareness, where you can be aware of these things that are happening. And yes, your logical brain might be like, oh yeah, I can generate a reason for that, but like you don't even have to understand it, you just have to observe it. And I think that's a really key thing as well, is just
yeah,
to come back
yeah,
to this place of like, gentle observation and just seeing and experiencing
yeah,
and being with what's happening. And it's like, there, I mean, I don't know what the lake was doing with it at that moment, but I'm like, well, something was obviously happening. There was a
yeah,
change. There was a change that happened. I'd been there for quite a while, and I noticed the shoreline retracted and held retracted for quite a
yeah,
while. And then it returned to sort of more normal for that day. And
yeah,
this is the thing, isn't it? Is it's just about, becoming more aware of how
yeah,
you are in the world as well.
yeah,
Um, I know you were talking about over distance, and there are so many traditions that use this like energy over distance. I mean, I've done Reiki, I'm a Reiki
Reiki,
master.
yes,
And
yeah,
one of the things with that is, you can offer Reiki healing over, distance.
yes,
That's everyone who progresses through the Reiki system
yes,
beyond the like foundation level. That's one of the things that you're taught to do. And I've
yes,
I've seen it and used it myself. I've received it and both given it to
yeah,
people. I've worked with my horses. I often work with therapists with my horses over a distance, obviously yourself in Australia, but also like
Yeah.
more physical people. So I work with an osteopath who's a classically trained osteopath, but he's in such demand that he
Yes.
can't
Yep.
travel to me. So,
Yep.
he offers distance treatments,
Yep.
and I've also studied myself a modality called osteojuice, which is it sort of had its base. The person who did sort of developed it was an classically trained osteopath, but it's something that's quite interesting about that is that the practitioner, their only role is to be an observer.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
really, really, really difficult to just do that. And it's because you can't, it's not your job to fix
Correct.
anything. And it's
Yeah.
not your, like, you sit there and you hold the space and you hold the observation of, the bones or the muscles, and you sort of, you invite them to return to their
Mm.
original,
Mm.
like, ideal position, but you
Yeah.
don't do anything, but you have to sit there
Yeah.
and hold the presence and the space and the intention for it to do what it needs to do. And
Yes.
I've actually had the privilege of working with someone else who's also trained in this, who worked with my horses, and I got to watch them. So they weren't there, they were at a distance, and we were communicating over WhatsApp, and they were working with my horses Charlie and Bear. And Charlie was in very, very lame, and she was working with him, and it was incredible to see like him moving and the different things that he was doing in response to her,
Mm-hmm.
working with his energy field from, she was a good sort of 2 hours drive away. So,
Yeah.
and she'd never
Yeah.
met him as well, which is also another interesting thing.
Yeah.
But it is just realizing that like this kind of is known, like it's not just with flower essences, it's not just with animal communication, like this
No.
intelligence, this
Yes.
realization of this power of like this connective web of energy that you can tap into is, it's
Yeah.
known through indigenous cultures, like that was how they experienced the world, was
Yes.
these energetic lines and imprints. And it's just, we need to move back into that awareness of that's the
Yeah.
world that we're living in and we have
Yeah.
available to us.
Absolutely. And it was interesting again listening to you when you were talking about the seaberry saltbush because it popped in to have a conversation. And, once again, and I remember, I'll never forget. My dad was actually dying at the time. It was 2 days before my dad passed away, and I'd been at the hospital and I just needed to go. And I was walking just through nature with my dogs at the time, but I wasn't anywhere near my home. I was further away. But I remember it was a Friday. I remember it so clearly. It was a Friday afternoon. We're walking along, and all of a sudden, a seaberry saltbush popped up and went, "Oh, I'm all about resilience." And I went, in my human sarcasm, "That's nice. Why are you telling me?" 2 days later, I was making the mother tincture. And, it was like what you were saying. It's about trusting that we don't always know why we're doing something. Like when you're talking about the lake and how it retracted. And, you said, I don't really know what the lake was doing. It's not only trusting, but it's being open to the possibilities of things that we don't know about. Because as humans, we do limit ourselves. Our imagination is limited. And there's often, it's like when people talk about doing vision boards, which aren't wrong, but I always say, do you leave a space for the things that you can't imagine or think of or the possibilities that you don't know about yet? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, that's very limiting. And it's, in that moment when you clearly heard from the lake, we don't want all the others. We just want the seaberry saltbush. And, your logical brain goes, oh, yeah, but I want to, no, trust. I know what I need, says the lake. Put it in, but I don't know what's happening. That's okay. I do. And it's really, we're taught, our left brain is taught we have to have the answer as to why, who, when, where, how, why. And if I haven't got the answers to all that, I can't trust it. Yes, you can. Because sometimes we don't know why we do something. Often when I was making blends, I didn't know why sometimes a particular flower was saying to me, put me in, but then something would happen, or I was working with a client or down the track and I'd go, Oh my goodness. That's what, I could be covered in goosebumps. That's why you asked me to put me in. I'm so glad I listened. They're like, we're so far ahead of you. I'm like, yeah, I'm just catching up now. And it really is trusting, like you were talking about what you were displaying. We don't always know why, but when that feeling is really strong to do something or not do something, trust it. Or if you get a message from the lake or from your horse or from a bird that's flying by or whatever it is, yes, your left logical brain's going, hang on, I'm sorry, you're talking to a pelican right now? I'm sorry, are you talking to a horse over in the UK right now? That doesn't make sense to me. I know it doesn't, but it feels right. And this is the bit where the plant kingdoms say like the animals, we've disconnected from the feeling. And when you were talking, and reminding me about the fireworks with your horses, that feeling that comes up through their feet is phenomenal. And that's something we've lost the ability to feel.
Yeah.
And we've lost the ability and also chosen to not want to feel things that might feel uncomfortable. So we've been taught to not feel. Whereas communication with other species, whether it be a plant, an animal, another human, is about feeling. Like you say with Reiki, with the work that you do, it's about the feeling over a distance. That's what telepathic means, feeling over a distance. It's not some wacky thing that I've learnt to do. We are all born this way.
Yeah, and I
Now,
think
you see a child and this is normal to them roughly up until about the age of 7 or when they go to school. And we say to them, do your reading, do your writing, do your maths, do, your science, all that. And we lose that balance between the left logical mind, which isn't wrong. It has a job to do. You've got to listen, but there must be a balance between the two.
I think it's important to realize as well that like we're viewing the world from the narrow window of the society and culture that we've been brought
Yeah,
up in.
yeah,
And you've mentioned the indigenous people of Australia because that's where you're based, so that's obviously you're quite deeply connected to them. And I know that you've had the privilege to spend time with some amazing people
yeah,
from their culture, both living and ancestors past.
yeah.
And for them this is normal, like this is,
Yes,
they're like, if you were having this conversation with one of them, they'd be like, duh. Like
yeah,
that's
yeah,
how we experience the world. Yeah, we
yeah,
communicate with the plants, we communicate with the animals, the rocks,
yes,
the earth, the ancestors. Like that's their lived experience. And yes, it feels very alien and very strange to us as, white Western patriarchal
yep,
colonialist society, all
yep,
of everything that has shaped our worldview. But actually that isn't the only worldview that exists even now. We're not even talking about, historically, we're talking about there are multiple people, multiple cultures alive and thriving in the world today, that
yes,
that's how they have always experienced the world.
yes,
It's like,
yeah,
and I think that's important to remember as well, is it's like we're not even reinventing something, we're just like remembering something that for some people
yes.
was never lost. Unfortunately for our culture it was.
And I was just when you were talking about my connection to the Indigenous people, I think I've mentioned before. There's a past Indigenous elder that I spent. He lives in the Mother Moonitry here, and it's really interesting because he popped in and he said, "Do you remember when you made the connection blend?" And I went, "Yes," because what was a really big part of the intention of the connection blend was the Indigenous people as well as the plants were really vocal about that. And what the Indigenous people showed me was, when they existed before, white man came along and said, we know better and you have to live in a house and you have to eat this. They lived barefoot on the land. They didn't have shops. They didn't have sugar. They didn't have, white man's food. And they were I really can't put into words the most extraordinarily strong, amazing culture that we came along and instead of having a balance of, said you have to live like us. And so when I was making the connection blend, which of course is about connecting not just to yourself, but to the land, to, whatever it is that you want to connect to, that was a really big part of sitting in that energy. Because when I make a blend, I'm not just making it for me. Yes, that's a very big part of it, because as a police officer, I was very disconnected. I was medicated, and it was a really big part of coming back to myself. But it was really important that when I sat in that energy of what do I want the connection blend, what's the intention behind it, that's when I also sit in the energy right across the planet. So, people say to me, oh, do you just make a blend in a day? I sit in the level of disconnect that exists on the planet. And when I'm sitting in that energy, that's when the flowers will come and say to me, put me in, put me in, put me in. Because as I'm sitting in that feeling, they've then got the information of what the intention is of that particular blend. Like my Free to Choose blend, which is all about addiction, I sat in the energy of the planet's addiction, the humans on the planet, for 3 months. It was awful. So you're talking about eating, gambling, drugs, whatever it is that you're addicted to. And I sat in that for months and months. And that was when the flowers were like, oh, put me in, put me in. And, like the Independence Blend, I think there's roughly about 38, something like that, flower essences in the Free to Choose, because I bring the energy of what's required in the blend, but I had to first be connected to be able to do that. And that's something that we can learn from the animals, from the plants, from other cultures about how they spend time in connection. And so that was really big, when you're talking about your horses, the disconnect that occurred, not just out here with the noise, but the disconnect of not being able to ground themselves to the planet, which is what animals do.
Yeah.
They don't wear shoes, rubber-soled shoes constantly. They are pretty much grounded to the planet, Mother Earth, all the time. And when something interferes with that, it really throws them out of whack.
Yeah.
And we've learnt to disconnect in order to cope.
Yeah, I think that's the really sad thing, isn't it? Is we've created this culture that is so unsupportive of us, that the only way that a lot of people can survive in it is to basically become really disconnected.
Yes.
And I think, we've seen that more and more in recent years. People are really, this rise in mental health, the awareness of mental health issues, but that's equally come because there's been a rise of mental health issues, particularly in young people. We've got to find a different way to move through society that is more supportive, and part of that comes with reconnecting to ourselves. And I mean, we have spoken in our previous episodes about your journey, and you've had a very challenging life, shall we say?
Yes.
Yeah, and it and you've been involved in many aspects of society. You were in the police for a very long time. You were also a school teacher. You were sort of in like these core aspects of society, I suppose, for want of a better description. There, and it I think what's really lovely is that you prove that like the phoenix, that it is possible to do it, like no matter how dark a place that you've come to and found yourself in and had to travel through, and a lot of it you did on your own as well. I mean, you did have support from the people that came into your life and things, but a lot of it, it was very it was work that you had to do. And
It's very isolating, yes, and
yeah,
I think a lot of people will recognise that word when you're working internally. It can be very isolating, and people, I guess, to speak very openly and honestly, people whom I thought were my friends really weren't, because
yeah,
when I actually needed help, I realized that our relationships were based on what I could do for them, what I could give them. And then when I hit rock bottom, to the point of being suicidal and having to be hospitalized, they didn't show up.
yeah,
And I went, oh, this is interesting. So, and I know I'm not unique in this. There are many humans on the planet that may listen to this will go, oh, I know that place. I know
yeah,
that feeling. But for me, in hindsight, I can look back and just see the level of disconnect that kept me in that place. So for me, and that's my passion behind my work of being a flower essence practitioner as well as an animal communicator, is bringing that connection back to the planet, because that's how we're meant to be. We're not meant to be isolated. We're not meant to be separate. We are meant to be in connection. It's how that is the norm. But unfortunately, and especially for us here in Victoria, in Melbourne, Victoria, here during COVID, where we were the worst lockdown place in the entire world, we are now seeing the impact of the disconnect that occurred then. Like, we were under curfew. We weren't
yeah,
allowed to leave our homes. And the impact, especially on our teenagers
yeah,
who couldn't go to school, couldn't see their friends, their mates, couldn't play sport, couldn't, like, our playground shut down, everything shut down. And what we're seeing now is the repercussions of almost 2 years of being in disconnect. And like you're saying, there's now a lot of mental health problems as a result of that. It is not human nature to be in disconnect, but it's what we do in order to be able to cope. What if there was a really gentle yet powerful way to come through that disconnect and gently over time peel away? Because this is how I describe it. It's like peeling away layers of the onion. You don't do it all in one hit. You do layers according to how you can cope. Doesn't mean it's not challenging, but bit by bit, you come back to more parts of yourself. And I liken it a little bit like a mobile phone. If you're in a good area of service or reception, you get, I don't know how many bars it is, I'm not a techie, but you get all the bars on your phone. It's a really clear conversation. If you're in a poor reception area, you might get one or two bars and the conversation cuts in and out and you only get a few words. That's how I liken communication with ourselves, the plants and the animals. The more parts of myself that I have available to communicate with, the better the communication is going to be. And I am still constantly working, if you like,
yeah,
evolving, changing, deepening. I'm not at that point where I go, woohoo, I'm evolved, I've got it all perfect. I'm constantly learning from the flowers, the plants, the trees, the animals. And that's where sometimes we've got to take a step back as humans, show a bit, be a bit humble and go, I actually don't know everything. I'm not the most intelligent species on the planet. And I think the world today reflects that. Perhaps there are more intelligent sources out there that if I'm quiet enough and sit in the stillness and work at keep connecting to myself, I will have access to.
yeah. I think something that I was thinking was really interesting when you were saying about the isolationism and like coming back to yourself. And I was thinking about what you do working with animals and plants. And I was thinking that's the beauty of it, is often the people that find themselves in these places, animals and plants give them a way to come back that is
Yep.
what we said earlier, gentle but powerful. And they don't have the ability to, the expectation of connecting to the people around them is too heavy and too great. And actually, the plants and the animals ask less of them in return. So it is this ability to
Yeah.
come back to yourself. And I think that's what comes through from all of our conversations, is that they are here to support us,
Yes.
and but they are asking for us now to actually, step up, and those of
Yeah.
us that
Yeah.
are, here, they, we need to, I don't want to say the word defend, because again, it's like not
Yeah.
quite got
It's
the
that
right
energy of the
intention
word.
of it. But be more vocal, I suppose, in
Be a
like,
voice.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, of sharing and making people aware of this powerful alliance that
Yeah.
is there for us, and these amazing beings that we can work with and co-create with, and we
Yeah.
have this amazing potential when we work with them, for, like you said, in the vision board, this space that we actually can't even comprehend or imagine that we
Yes.
can possibly step into, and the
Yep.
potential that holds for ourselves personally, our communities, but also like the world at large. And it's time. Basically,
Yes. It
it's
is.
time. This is,
It is.
your orca whales were,
Oh
they
yeah.
they came to us. I was mentioning to Kes, she said that the orca whales are passing through her area of Australia at the moment, and they wanted to share some wisdom with us, and we had this amazing coincidence, because I'd been approached by someone else, and their PR company was called Orca Communication.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's just realizing, we share this planet
Mhm.
with incredible wisdom and beings who want to partner with us. They're there, they're
Yes.
ready, they're waiting, they're like, come on, it's time. And we need to just get out of this belief that, oh, how can that happen, how can that work, and
Yeah.
just be like, we don't have to understand it, just go
No.
out. And I did an episode recently called The Spiritual Wisdom of Trees, and that was just encouraging people to go out and connect with a tree,
Yeah.
and just sit with it, and be open, come with an open heart. That was the,
Yes.
a real message, was like, connect to your heart, open your heart, and just be open to receive what is possible. And then, don't analyze it to the point
Yeah.
that you decide that it can't possibly be true, and just, begin to experience this world that is actually there and is open to us. But I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know if there's anything you feel that we haven't covered, or the plants feel that we haven't covered, or even the animals feel that we haven't covered, that you'd like to sort of bring in, or anything you'd like to leave us with as we sort of start to think about wrapping up today.
I think it was interesting because as you were talking, have we ever spoken about the survival tree at Ground Zero in New York?
We've spoken personally. I'm not sure if we have actually spoken on the podcast. I can't
Yeah,
remember.
it came up
Yeah.
really strongly. So I'll just briefly, and people can look it up when obviously when 9/11 occurred at Ground Zero, it just obliterated everything. And I went over there as a member of the police force I think it was only a couple of months later. And the survival tree is extraordinary because everything was obliterated. But this arborist found this one tree that just had very little obviously above the ground. But there was just a knowing in him. So he dug it up and took it away and nurtured it, and it thrived. And so they took it back when they did the memorial at Ground Zero. And it's interesting because all the trees planted are the same except the survival tree. So the survival tree is the only one of its kind in this area. Now, I was traveling to New York City many years later after the commemorative area was made. But prior to going there, I'd been to Uluru, our Ayers Rock, and I was asked, and I got permission to take some of the soil from the base of Uluru. I also took some, what I call holy water, from one of the water areas around Uluru. I was also asked to make a blend, and I'm like, what am I doing this for? And I was told to take it to New York City with me. And I didn't know anything about the survival tree. I knew nothing. I was a tourist. So it was really interesting. I was with Lisa from London, and we went, and we were going to travel down to have a look that day. And I went, you've got to take your soil. And can you imagine trying to get this stuff through customs? I don't know. It got through Thank you. So I've got these things in my pocket. When I got there, I could feel the energy of this one particular tree saying, "You've got to put these things at my base." And I'm like, there's hundreds of trees. And I'm like, and it's a really big area. And I'm like, I've got no idea what I'm doing. So I went up to the information place, got a pamphlet, and you open it up and it talks about the survival tree. And I'm like, oh, and it shows you where it is. I'm like, oh. So over I go, and of course you can imagine security guards everywhere. So you can imagine some loony pouring water, soil, drops, like yeah, another, hello. And you can imagine New York City's still on high alert. So when I'm dropping the soil at the base, putting the drops in, and it was like I don't know how to. It was like the tree energetically. It's like its limbs came. Oh, I'm going to get emotional. Its limbs came out and wrapped around me, and just gave me this huge hug. Now, logically, it makes no sense to me why I took those things or what they even did. It was the intention behind honouring this thing that had like this much stick or stem above the ground. It is now this huge, like who could have survived that? It did. And it's just that reminder again of like what you were talking, yes, we can live in survival, but then we can also come out and thrive.
Yeah.
We don't have to stay in the survival. The plant kingdom can gently guide us and take us through to living a life, not just surviving and thriving. And there's a classic example of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really really powerful, and I'm very grateful to the tree for
Yeah.
coming through, because I think
Yeah.
that's the space that we've been stuck in for a very long time as a society, is this survival. And actually,
Yeah.
for many of us, I think the concept of thriving has become so foreign that
Lauren,
we
yes.
can't even imagine it, like it's not even something that our cells even recognize. Like, we don't know how to move to it, because it's just something that we're
It's
not familiar with. We're so used
correct.
to, conditioned. And when we were
Yep.
talking about mental health, a lot of that is linked to like PTSD, and you can go
Yes.
into like the trauma responses, and all
Yep.
of that is you become locked in survival. You become locked into these energetic responses. And yeah, I think it's time, thriving is time, it's
Yep.
time for, and that's what the
Yep.
animals and the plants are calling for. It's time for us to, as a society, moving to this space of
Yeah.
thriving in connection with each other.
Yeah.
And by doing your work and working with the flower essences, it can support us as we move through this journey, and
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
what is ours to do. Like, it's something that we often talk about, is we don't all have to be animal communicators or flower essence
No.
practitioners, but there is
No.
something that is yours to do. And as you can
Yep.
move out of that place of surviving into thriving, then you are able to fully show up in the world and do what is yours to
Yep.
do, and
Yep.
contribute to moving towards this vision of actually a place where we are reconnected, where we live in harmony. And I think,
Yes.
that's
Yes.
obviously particularly topical at the moment with everything that's going on. Um,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
yeah, I think, well, it's been, again, absolutely amazing. I have no doubt that we will have to have another conversation at some point, because
Oh, I'm
like,
sure either the animals or the plants will let us know when that's due. Like,
yeah,
I
I mean,
just listen.
yeah, I think what's really lovely isn't for people listening, like we both sit here before and we're like, have you prepared? Just like, no, no, like we have
No,
no idea what's going to
nope.
come up and what we're going to share. And it's just trusting the process, and
Yeah.
the fact that we follow our intuition and the messages that
Yes.
we receive while we're speaking.
Yeah.
And we have had, over, I think there's probably going to be about 4 hours, because we always run over the hour of like the three conversations on the podcast that we've had. And that very little information has been repeated. Yes, there are little anecdotes that we've perhaps shared again, but it's like, there is this huge wealth of information. So I'd invite people to go back and listen to those previous episodes as well, and your website link I will have on the show notes. Do you want to just quickly share it with people, because we have said like there's quite a lot of information that you've got on there about your essences if they'd like to go and read some more.
Sure. So it's www.animal-communicator.com.au.
And I would encourage people to go and read some of your newsletters and things, because there is again a huge amount of information about how the plants have communicated with Kerrie and sort of formed these essences, and a huge wealth of information. And obviously you are very busy, but if people wanted to work with you with their animals, there's an opportunity for that as well. But it has been an absolute pleasure. I've huge gratitude in my heart as always for being connected to you and the amazing wisdom that you're able to share with us, and also obviously all the other beings, plants, animals, the orcas, the Muna tree, and our lovely survival tree that has come through, and your dogs as well that were very active.
Oh yes, they had to be heard today, didn't
they? But they're always welcome, so we don't mind their little tappy toes in the background.
Yes, I know, I'm very aware of that, but then that's something that I just, those that want to, like, two are not here, but one's here right now. It's just that I let them do what they need to do. So if people can hear the tappy, I'm like, yeah, that's one of my dogs. Just adds to the ambience.
Well, that's it. I just wanted to like acknowledge their presence as well, because I know that they've been there holding space for us today as well.
Absolutely.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Kerrie. And
thank you.
I hope everyone who is listening has enjoyed it, and no doubt we will be back again at some point with with some more for you.
Thanks, Fiona. Lovely to talk to you again.
Thank you so much for listening to the Nurtured by Nature podcast. I truly hope this conversation has brought some hope and inspiration into your life. I would love to have these messages ripple out across the world. So if you can, please share this episode with your friends, leave a review on your favourite podcast player, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. I would love to hear from you, so please feel free to connect with me on the links provided in the podcast description. But most importantly, thank you so much for being a part of this journey with me. But don't forget to simply get out there and enjoy the natural world.